2 Samuel chapter 14, the wise woman of Tekoa. Now Job, son of Zeruiah, knew how the king felt towards Ahasulam. Job sent to Tekoa and brought from there a wise woman, to whom he said, "Pretend to be in mourning, put on mourning apparel, and do not anoint yourself with oil, that you may appear to be a woman who has long been mourning someone dead. Then go to the king and speak to him in this manner." And Job told her what to say. To the woman of Tekoa went to a king and fell to the ground in homage, saying, "Help, O king." The king said to her, "What do you want?" She replied, "Alas, I am a widow. My husband is dead. Your servant had 2 sons who quarreled in the field with no one to part them, and one of them struck his brother and killed him. Then the whole clan confronted your servant and demanded, 'Give up the one who struck down his brother. We must put him to death for the life of his brother whom he has killed. We must do away with the heir also, thus leave my husband neither name nor posterity upon the earth.' The king then said to the woman, 'Go home, I will issue a command on your behalf.' The woman of Tekoa answered him, 'Upon me and my family be the blame, my lord king. The king and his throne are innocent.' Then the king said, 'If anyone says a word to you, you have brought him to me, and he shall not touch you again.' But she said, 'Please let the king remember the Lord your God, that the avenger of blood may not go too far in destruction, that my son may not be done away with.' He replied, 'As the Lord lives, not a hair of your son shall fall to the ground.' But the woman continued, 'Please let your servant say still another word to my lord the king.' He replied, 'Speak.' So the woman said, 'Why then do you think the way you do against the people of God? In pronouncing as he has, the king shows himself guilty in not bringing back his own banished son. We must indeed die. We are then like water that is poured out on the ground and cannot be gathered up. Yet, though God does not bring back to life, he does devise means so as not to banish anyone from him. And now if I have presumed to speak to the king of this matter, it is because the people have given me cause to fear. And so your servant thought, let me speak to the king. Perhaps he will grant the petition of his servant. For the king must surely listen and rescue his servant from the grasp of one who would destroy both me and my son from the heritage of God. And your servant says, let the word of my lord the king lead to rest. Indeed, my lord the king is like an angel of God, discerning good and evil. The Lord your God be with you." The king answered the woman, "Now do not conceal from me anything I may ask you." The woman said, "Let my lord the king speak." So the king asked, "Is the hand of Job with you in all of this?" And the woman answered, "As you live, my lord the king, it is just as my lord has said, and not otherwise. It was your servant Job who instructed me and told your servant all these things she was to say. Your servant Job did this in order to approach the matter in a roundabout way, but my lord is wise in the wisdom of an angel of God, knowing all things on earth." Absalom's return. Then the king said to Job, "I am granting this request. Go and bring back young Absalom." Falling to the ground in homage and blessing the king, Job said, "This day your servant knows that I am in good favor with you, my lord king, since the king has granted the request of your servant." Job then went off to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. But the king said, "Let him go off to his own house. He shall not appear before me." So Absalom went off to his house and did not appear before the king. In all of Israel there was no man more praised for his beauty than Absalom, flawless from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. When he shaved his head, as he used to do at the end of every year, because his hair became too heavy for him, the hair weighed 200 shekels according to the royal standard. Absalom had 3 sons born to him, besides a daughter named Tamar, who was a beautiful woman. Absalom is pardoned. Absalom lived in Jerusalem for 2 years without appearing before the king. Then he sent a message asking Job to send him to the king. But Job would not come to him. Although he asked him a second time, Job would not come. He therefore instructed his servants, "You see Job's fields that border mine, where he has barley. Go set it on fire." And so Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Job's farm hands came to him with torn garments and told him, "Absalom's servants set your field on fire." Job went to Absalom in his house and asked him, "Why have your servants set my field on fire?" Absalom answered Joab, I sent you a message, come here, that I may send you to my king to say, why did I come back from Geshur? I would be better off if I were still there. Now let me appear before the king. If I am guilty, let him put me to death. Joab went to the king and reported this. The king then called Absalom. He came to him, and in homage fell on his face to the ground before the king. Then the king kissed Absalom. Absalom's ambition. After this, Absalom provided himself with chariots, horses, and a retinue of 50. Moreover, Absalom used to rise early and stand alongside the road leading to the gate. If someone had a lawsuit to be decided by the king, Absalom would call him and say, from what city are you? And when he replied, your servant of such and such a tribe of Israel, Absalom would say to him, your case is good and just, but there is no one to hear you in the king's name. And he would continue, if only I could be appointed judge in the land. Then everyone who has a lawsuit to be decided might come to me, and I would render him justice. Whenever a man approached him to show homage, he would extend his hand, hold him, and kiss him. By behaving in this way towards all the Israelites who came to the king for judgment, Absalom was stealing the heart of Israel. Conspiracy in Hebron. After a period of 4 years, Absalom said to the king, please let me go to Hebron and fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. For while living in Geshur in Aram, your servant made this vow, if the Lord ever brings me back to Jerusalem, I will worship him in Hebron. The king said to him, go in peace, and he went off to Hebron. Then Absalom sent agents throughout the tribes of Israel to say, when you hear the sound of the horn, say Absalom is king of Hebron. 200 men had accompanied Absalom from Jerusalem. They had been invited and went in all innocence, knowing nothing. Absalom also sent to Ahithophel the Gilonite, David's counselor, an invitation to come from his town, Gilo, from sacrifices he was about to offer. So the conspiracy gained strength, and the people with Absalom increased in numbers. David flees Jerusalem. An informant came to David with the report, the Israelites have given their hearts to Absalom, and they are following him. At this, David said to all his servants who were with him in Jerusalem, get up, let us flee, or none of us will escape from Absalom. Leave at once, or he will quickly overtake us, and then bring disaster upon us, and put the city to the sword. The king's servants answered him, whatever our lord the king chooses to do, we are your servants. Then the king set out, accompanied by his entire household, except for 10 concubines, whom he left behind to care for your palace. As the king left the city with all the officers accompanying him, they halted opposite the ascent of the Mount of Olives at a distance, while the whole army marched past him, David and Ittai, as all of the Sherethites and Pelethites and the 600 Gittites who had entered his service from that city were passing in review before the king. The king said to Ittai the Gittite, why should you also go with us? Go back and stay with the king, for you are a foreigner, and you too are in exile from your own country. You came only yesterday, and today shall I have you wander off with us wherever I have to go? Return and take your brothers with you, and may the Lord show you kindness and fidelity. But Ittai answered the king, as the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, your servant shall be whatever my lord the king is, whatever for death or for life. So the king said to Ittai, go then. March on, and Ittai the Gittite with all his men and all the dependents that were with him marched on. The whole land wept aloud as the last of the soldiers went by, and the king crossed the Wadi Kidron with all of the soldiers moving on ahead of him by the way of the ascent to the Mount of Olives toward the wilderness. David and the priests, Zadok too, and all of the Levites bearing the ark of the covenant of God set down the ark of God until the whole army had finished marching out of the city. And Abiathar came up. Then the king said to Zadok, take the ark of God back to the city. If I find favor with the Lord, he will bring me back and permit me to see it and its lodging place. But if he should say, I am not pleased with you, I am ready, let him do to me as he sees fit. The king also said to Zadok the priest, look, you and Abiathar return to the city in peace, and both your sons with you. Your son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan. Remember, I shall be waiting at the fords near the wilderness until a report from you comes to me. So Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to Jerusalem and remained there. As God went up to the ascent of the Mount of Olives, he wept without ceasing. His head was covered, and he was walking barefoot. All those who were with him also had their heads covered and were weeping as they went. When David was told Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom, he said, O Lord, turn the counsel of Ahithophel to folly. David and Hushai. When David reached the top where God was worshipped. Hushai the Archite was there to meet him with garments torn and dirt upon his head. David said to him, "If you come with me, you will be a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'Let me be your servant, O king. I was formerly your father's servant, but now I will be yours,' you will thwart for me the counsel of Ahithophel. You will have the priests Zadok and Abiathar there with you. If you hear anything from the king's house, you shall report it to the priests Zadok and Abiathar, who have there with them their 2 sons, Zadok's son Ahimaaz, and Abiathar's son Jonathan. Through them you shall send on to me whatever you hear." So David's friend Hushai went into the city of Jerusalem, and Absalom was about to enter it.